Fiona Cullen. Fiona is speaking on behalf of our third speaker from Papua New Guinea, who is Kylian Kenny. Kylian is unable to join us for the conference, and Fiona has stepped in to present Kylian's presentation. Now let me just tell you a little bit about Kylian and also Fiona. Kylian Kenny is a mechanical engineer and a long-standing Soroptimist, who together with her community has developed innovative solutions on food security, building above-ground gardens using local and recycled materials, even in the face of climate change and rising sea levels. Her story is a beautiful example of how local knowledge and determination can create real and lasting change. Fiona here is a leadership facilitator and founder of For Mastery with over 25 years of experience across sectors. She has trained over 2,000 individuals in key leadership skills. A former Australian athlete, which sport was that?
2 sports, track and field. I was a sprinter hurdler, and I also did bobsled.
Right, okay, Australians, I'm sure you know who she is. A former Australian athlete, she combines sporting discipline with practical strategies. Passionate about growth, she empowers leaders to guide teams with clarity, purpose, and confidence. The floor is yours, Fiona.
Thank you, Joanne. So I want to take you on a trip to Papua New Guinea. So Kylian is a member of the SISEAP North Club. She became a member of our club when the WeWork Club folded the first time. I know they're back in the fold again, which is great. It happens with our clubs, and the fact that women keep reinventing themselves, that's what keeps and gives us hope. So Kylian joins us. So I guess SISEAP North is a bit of an unusual club in that we have a lot of members who don't physically reside in our region, in our city. And that's for a lot of different reasons. Some are the daughters of our members and they moved overseas but stayed connected. Others are long-serving Soroptimists who now live in other countries as expatriates. And the way of staying connected as a Soroptimist is to join in our club meetings, which we have majority online. And we did that long before the pandemic. So the transition for us during that time was easy. So we're sitting on a Zoom meeting one evening, and Kylian started to talk to us about a little side project that she'd started. So she's a mechanical engineer, which again for a woman in PNG is unique and unusual. Yet she was raised by an incredibly fierce woman, a strong Christian woman in her mother. And there was never an option to not contribute in some way and to be educated. And so because of that incredible role model she had in her life, all of her siblings and herself dedicated themselves to their studies. And she was one of the first female engineers to be educated out of her family and also her village and also her community. So, you know how us women are not content to just do our day jobs, and we always find ways to do things on the side. So Kylian, having grown up in the East Sepik Province, in a village in this region, wanted to give back to her village. She noticed that when her and her husband Ella went back to the village, so Ella is an elder and a chief in Darapap Village. And when they would go home to the village, they have their own hut that they live in. And she noticed how challenging it was to get food when they stayed. They would bring supplies with them from their main, where they live in WeWork. But then it was really difficult to get simple things like cruciferous vegetables. So being right near the seaside, there was plenty of seafood, but not necessarily the green leafy vegetables that you also need to have a balanced and well-rounded diet. So she started playing around with seedlings, and this idea is starting to propagate some food in the back gardens. Now there's a bunch of challenges you overcome, and I'm going to take you through that now. But before I do that, I want to take you back to that Zoom meeting. So here we are, all those faces on the screen, a bunch of well-meaning white women talking to our PNG sister, and she says, oh, you know, I'm trying to do this thing to help the women in my village. The women currently paddle in dugout canoes for 14 hours to get their produce to market. Sometimes they don't make it because the canoes get capsized, the food is stolen, or the women are stolen by warring tribes. And we're sitting there aghast, exactly that same reaction. And one of our members, Trish, says, well, why can't we just buy you an outboard motor? It's a very logical Western person's idea, isn't it? Yeah, well, let's just buy you an outboard motor. And Kylie said, yeah, that would be helpful. But the challenge is the water systems and the river systems that the women have to negotiate and navigate are very shallow. So a normal outboard motor won't do. It must be a special kind that's a smaller wattage, and it sits longer and higher in the water. And of course, they're quite unique and unusual. Anyway, so this is a conversation we had 4 years ago. We still have not got the outboard motor. Now, we've put a deposit on it, we've sourced it, but for the last 2 years, the climate and the location has been too dangerous and too difficult to get up there, to transport anything up there. Add to that the cost of fuel. You think the cost of fuel now is an issue? Try living in PNG where there isn't enough to begin with. And the cost of a barrel of fuel was basically going to cost the remainder of the funds that we'd raised just for one trip up, which obviously we don't want to do that. So, crazy circumstances that they're living in. So yeah, why don't we just buy an outboard motor? That's where it started. And the other beautiful thing was essentially to help the phase one. So Kylie, this is the village. So it's surrounded by seawater, and that particular region, on average, gets 2,500 mil of rain. That's 2.5 meters average. Now, the last 2 years, they've had typhoons in January, which caused landslides. They also had an earthquake halfway through 2025. So there was a lot of destruction that happened. That's just a natural, normal, every annual cycle for these people where they live. So you can see it's called the Murik Lake. So there's an image of the village and the huts. So the huts sit out over water, and they're essentially right on the ocean. In terms of your proximity, in terms of the top of PNG, you can see where it sits up there. So a huge lake system, which has its benefits in terms of abundance of sea life, etc., but has its challenges in terms of minimal or no arable land to actually plant food in and grow. So seeing your project there, Sarada, and the ability to just build an A-frame on the land, wouldn't that be amazing? But there's no land to build it on here. So the option that we had was to build over water, because it's a tidal system. So these are, I guess, the typical dwellings. And in January this year, where the typhoon came through, the school and some of the village huts were destroyed. So the village right now is in the process of rebuilding, and the other thing that got destroyed was the original veggie patches that were built. So water shortage as well. I think it was one of you that was saying people walk 5 kilometres every day. So these people have to have a boat ride for 3.5 hours to go get the only drinkable water source. So each family has their own jerry can that they refill, and essentially the access to water is the biggest challenge. So as part of this project as well, the key piece is getting the water tanks up there. We have the water tanks, we just can't get them to the village yet. So this here is a picture of the first phase, and this is again that buy-in, that education, that training piece is so key. The other thing that I want to make sure that we acknowledge, without Kylie Ann and Ella, that partnership and this project would not be possible for two reasons. One, Ella's status as an elder and a chief in the village means that the buy-in is automatically there. The second piece with Kylie Ann as the chief's wife means that her voice gets heard and that her influence is elevated. And the other piece as well is they live in the community, they have a house there, so they're part of the village. It's not someone coming in trying to do good, it's someone already in there lifting up from the ground. So that's a really key piece. So the first phase was getting these dugout canoes, whatever they could possibly find in terms of elevating and getting the soil off the ground. Because they're in a saltwater environment, the first thing they need to do is desalinate the soil. And the other thing as well is obviously setting up the seedlings and growing a nursery. So part of what Kylie Ann did in the initial stages was to test different types of seedlings that would be tolerant to the salt environment. She found a particular type of bok choy and pak choy that thrive, some mushrooms, some melons and some capsicums, and so there's a bunch that she's been able to figure out work in this place, again because she's there in the village, not someone who doesn't live there. So and cherry tomatoes are also a really good one to thrive. I feel like tomatoes grow anywhere. So the other thing about the initial stages, we were going to originally put the platform closer to the village, but then we realised from a tidal standpoint and also from a point of view of access to the other 5 villages in the region, it made more sense to actually put the deck in a different location. So thankfully we did that before the construction phase happened. This next piece is really key. So this is Ella in the black shirt there, and he's briefing all of the men, and they are about to go out and fell the timber. This is how they got the timber. So they felled the timber locally from mangroves, and they hand cut all of them, hand pulled them all out, and then floated them over to the location. And then, they were compensated. So that for their families meant a lot to be able to be part of that. And essentially what we're constructing is this. So the platform you can see is more or less the size of this stage. And the first phase is this, where the vegetable garden will go. So having an actual permanent nursery where we can put the seedlings so that they're out of the salt and they can be grown there. Then we've got the vegetable garden on the raised deck here. The desalination plant is a secondary piece, and that's a separate funded part of the project. The water tanks, however, are part of our system, obviously, because we need to be able to give water to the plants. The benefit of having a desalination plant there, again, it's about supplying that fresh potable drinking water to all of the villages in that location. So that one's a bit of a Hail Mary, that one, so we'll see how that goes. But ultimately, if we can get the vegetable garden going, then this has the capacity to not only feed the village, but have enough excess for them to either sell to or barter to the other local villages. So the reason for this scale is that sustainability piece. How can they continue to then grow more than they need so they can actually then generate funds but also feed the entire region? So that's the long-term piece. Now the biggest challenge has been actually building this platform. So this is the water that I'm showing you here. So this is how they currently get the water. And that's a 3.5-hour boat ride, which of course requires fuel. So if you don't have fuel, then you don't have the boat, which then means you don't have water. So this is the remoteness of this whole location, which is the biggest challenge. So we relocated to make sure that it was around the other side of the entrance, and thankfully, this is the setup and the plotting out of where they would put the platform. Thankfully, they did make that move, so this is how each of these poles has been erected, so you can see it's back-breaking work. And they've put them up singularly, so this is a tidal part, and the reason why they shifted it as well, with this, you can see with the location, from a tidal standpoint, away from the entrance, because when you have typhoons, you get high king tides that come flying through here. So that was the other reason why they moved it. So now we have, so this was the initial setup, the first row being installed. By the end of it, they had the entire platform mapped out, and they have an additional, since this photo was taken, there's an additional 30. So all of the vertical poles are in. The challenge is our horizontal poles, all the timbers for that, including the roof for the nursery, all of the nuts and bolts, all of those things, they've all been purchased and they're sitting, waiting to get up there. And for the last 2 years, it has been too dangerous and impossible in terms of fuel to actually get things up to the location. So with what's just happened in the most recent typhoon that went through, and the decimation of the village, the women, I spoke to Kylie this morning, and the women have started rebuilding their veggie patches. And what it's told me with regards to the future of this project, one, we picked the right spot, because those poles are still standing and they're ready to go. So when we put the horizontal struts in, that means that the platform will survive the next typhoon, which is great. So that's awesome. And then the next piece as well will be continuing to make sure that we can replenish things every year and expect things to be destroyed every year, because the nature of climate change and the nature of this location, it's not going to stop happening. So we need to make sure that whatever funds we are able to raise out of the excess sale, that goes into the cooperative, and the women in that village do have a cooperative. So that's the other beautiful thing about this project, is the women are in control of the funds and the money that is generated out of the sale. 50% of all sales of any of their personal produce that they produce out of their home gardens goes into a cooperative that all the women can access. So if they need to get a boat to the local medical clinic, they can pay for the fuel out of that cooperative. So that's another reason why we wanted to do the work here, because we already have a governance structure in this location where the women have control over that money and control over their own destiny there too. So thank you.
Thank you very much.